One of the greatest lessons I have learned both from my own life and from the people who I work with is actually surprisingly very simple. Life is happening right now. Well, it sounds obvious, but of course, life is right now. But how many of us are actually live that way? So for years, I believed that I was preparing for life. I studied, worked, achieved, built a career. I developed myself. I kept learning because I believed that if I understood enough, accomplished enough, and became good enough at what I was doing, eventually I would arrive somewhere. And then I would live. Many of the high achievers I work with have exactly the same thing. They have become incredibly good at achieving. They know how to set a goal and reach it. They know how to solve complicated problems. They know how to work when they are tired. And they know how to keep going when everyone else wants to stop. Familiar, huh? Because these abilities can create extraordinary success. But there is another side of achievement that we don't talk about enough. Sometimes we become so good at achieving that we forget how to experience the life we created. We are always preparing for the next thing, the next goal, the next project, the next level of income, the next qualification, and the next version of ourselves. And sometimes in all of that preparation, we begin postponing our lives. We tell ourselves, when I have enough money, I will relax. When the business becomes stable, I will spend more time with my family. When I finish this project, I will take care of myself. When I understand myself better, I will finally be ready for a relationship. When I've healed enough, I will allow myself to be happy. But there is always another project. There is always another problem to solve. There is always something else we could improve. And life keeps happening while we are getting ready for it. One of my clients reminded me of this in a most beautiful way. She had spent decades developing herself, learning, growing, trying to become better. One day she realized something incredibly simple. Life wasn't waiting for her in the future. Life was right now. And that realization stayed with me because I had done the same thing. I've spent so much of my own life achieving, learning, working, helping, becoming. And then I had to learn there is a difference between building a meaningful life and constantly preparing yourself for one. I see another interesting pattern in many high achievers. Their minds have become incredibly well trained for performance. They can remember sales numbers from years ago. They can remember what happened in an important meeting. They know their targets, their deadlines, their business strategies, their performance results. But sometimes they forget the small thing their partner asked them to bring home. And not because they don't care, not because their relationship isn't important. Their attention has simply become trained for performance rather than presence. Their mind is constantly asking what needs to be solved, what needs to be improved, what's next, what am I forgetting, and what could go wrong. And eventually, that mind follows them home. So the meeting ended 3 hours ago, but the conversation is still happening in their head. Their partner is sitting beside them, but mentally they are somewhere else. And their child is telling them a story, but the part of their mind is already solving tomorrow's problem. And these little moments matter because relationships don't always break because of one enormous event. Sometimes they weaken through hundreds of small moments in which someone doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard, and doesn't feel remembered, doesn't feel counted in. And this is why presence matters. Presence isn't doing nothing. Presence is the ability to actually be where you are. Another lesson I have learned is that many of the behaviors we judge in ourselves are not actually the original problem. They are solutions. Because some people overwork, some overthink, some exercise excessively, and some become extremely controlling around food. And some people smoke, some drink, and some turn to pornography or compulsive sexual behavior. The behavior may look completely different from one person to another, but underneath something very similar may be happening. The person is trying to change the way they feel. They are looking for a relief, or for stimulation, or for control, or for an escape, or for a few minutes of silence inside themselves. So this is why I don't believe shame creates lasting transformation. If I tell someone, you shouldn't do that, I haven't helped them understand why they need the behavior in the first place. So the more useful question is, what is happening inside you immediately before you reach for it? What are you feeling? What are you trying not to feel? What does this behavior give you for those few moments? Because the coping mechanism isn't your identity. It is something your nervous system learned. And what has been learned can be changed. Anger is another beautiful example here. Many people are deeply ashamed of their anger, especially successful people. They can lead companies really calmly with a very cool head. They can negotiate enormous contracts. They can manage hundreds of employees. And then something small happens at home and they explode. Afterward, they look at themselves and think, why did I do that? I know better. And I understand this. So why can't I control myself? But knowing better and responding differently are not always the same thing. Underneath anger, there may be disappointment or rejection, fear, combined with loneliness and perhaps helplessness, or the feeling that something is happening that I cannot control. If I only work with the anger part, I may miss the real story. So I want to know what happened inside the person before the anger appeared. What did that moment mean to them? What did their body recognize? What old emotional response was activated? This is where curiosity becomes more powerful than judgment. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson of all. We cannot control everything that happens to us. We cannot control how another person behaves, and we cannot control whether someone understands us. We also cannot control every business results. And we cannot control whether life unfolds accordingly to our plans. However, we can learn to become aware of the state from which we meet what happens. Can I remain calm when something doesn't go my way? Can I remain steady when someone disappoints me? And can I stay present when life becomes uncomfortable? Inner peace doesn't mean that nothing difficult ever happens. It means that when life becomes difficult, I don't have to lose myself with it. And this is why I keep coming back to the same simple realization. Life is not waiting for us after the next achievement. It isn't waiting for us after we make more money. And life definitely not waiting for us and we have healed everything. It isn't waiting for us after we have finally become the person we think we are supposed to be. Because life is already here. This conversation is life. The person sitting next to you is life. Your walk in the morning is life. Brushing your teeth is life. Taking the dog out for a walk is life. A quiet cup of tea in the morning is life. Reading your book is life. A difficult conversation is life. Uncertainty is life. The laughter is life. Even the imperfect parts are life. We can spend another 10 years preparing ourselves to live, or we can begin noticing the life that's already happening right now.